Welcome to the Building Savvy Bottom Line. I'm your host, Beverly Smyrnas. Our bottom line goal is to ensure that building or remodeling a home is a seamless and enjoyable process, helping builders and their customers better understand each other's challenges, expectations, and industry norms. This episode is brought to you by The Ultimate Guide to Buying and Building in Texas, an online course for Texas newbies or anyone making their first home purchase in Texas. To learn more, visit buildingsavvy.com. Well, I'm excited to be talking to Paul Evans today. Known Paul for a long time from the home building industry. Paul's involved in a lot of different very cool things in his life. Tell us a little bit about your engineering background and I know you have licenses in all kinds of states and stuff.
I have 28 construction licenses in 22 different states. And with BFS, they use my licenses to be able to install product in that state. So that's how it works.
Cool. And I know that you have served during several code writing sessions. So let's just talk to the audience about the process and then how you've been involved with that.
I was a member of the ICC board for 6 years. That's the longest you can be on 2-3-year terms. The way that works is that they break the codes up into sections, and then those sections are worked on with the board group. I've been on the structural side, obviously, because I'm a structural engineer. I was on the structural side for 3 years. Then we skipped 3 years. Then I was on the energy code side for 3 years. That was very interesting. I still get phone calls on that today, asking questions to run some calculations on energy code. So I keep up with the energy codes, even though I'm not on the ICC board. That's the International Conservation Code Board or the International Code Compliance. They're both ICC. And they both are the governing board of the IBC, which is the International Building Code, and the IRC, which is the International Residential Code. The governing board is the ICC. So that's how I got involved. I actually got involved in it because I was in the what's called COG, Council of Government, and they have a codes committee. I got on that and got really interested in it. You know, I'm a guy who reads the instructions on the DVD player, right? You know, nobody does, and I do. Anyway, so I really got into that, and that's how I got on the ICC board. It was kind of like the next step. And since I've dropped off the ICC board, I can now be a helper for the other boards like COG, and also I'm with the WMA, the World Millwork Alliance. They have a board that discusses any codes having to do with doors or windows. And I'm on that board now. And I know the people that call it the ICC if we have questions on, hey, why are you doing this to this U factor or whatever? So pretty interesting how that works. A lot of people, go, this is the most boring stuff in the world. But to me, it's exciting to be able to not only help that, but also it's exciting to educate architects and builders and the general public who think that, hey, we need to do this. We need to make this code more stringent because of X, Y, Z. And it's great for me to be able to educate them on why we can't do that or why we shouldn't do that. So we've got quite a few things that came out in the 2024 that we finished about a year and a half ago that are less stringent than they wanted, because the manufacturing industry could not make what the code wanted. So anyway, crazy stuff.
So the intent of the codes is to make homes more efficient, safer, and all that. But a lot of times there's kind of some self-interest things that get introduced that are just like, what were they thinking?
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what these were. They were saying they wanted a U factor so low and they wanted a solar heat gain coefficient so low that it was impossible for a manufacturer to do that on a broad basis. Those numbers were available from some window manufacturers that build a high-end window. I don't want to mention names, but there are high-end window companies that make very super efficient windows. But let's face it, the general public couldn't afford a $2,000 window. So that's the kind of things that we've got to take into account when we're coming up with these codes. And when someone says, hey, this is what I want, hey, I'm sorry, but that's just too expensive. So
yeah, I know that the building codes, there's climate zones that each have different building codes. And I know, for example, it's really weird that somewhere in the middle of North Dallas or up in the Frisco area is exactly where the line is between the code boundary.
Yeah, so back in 2001, this is bad that I know this. So back in 2001, and for everybody out there, Beverly didn't ask me these questions ahead of time so I could look it up. So anyway, back in 2001, they came out with these zones. They had 5 zones. And North Texas is very odd because basically what Beverly just said, the center of Dallas North is a different climate zone than the center of Dallas South. And only because the climatologist has determined that there's a wave there. And in 2001, when they came out with the 5 zones, they realized that the houses that were built north Dallas up to the Red River in Oklahoma were not as efficient as the ones down south. And they ran the numbers. Actually, Dow Chemical did a very good study on that many years ago. They built 10 houses and each one of them built a little bit differently. And they realized that the climate zone separation needed to be through the city of Dallas, basically. And so that's why they went from 5 zones to 7. Any house that's built above that is in a different climate zone than ones below it. But let me make sure that everybody understands that is the prescriptive code, meaning that those zones are prescriptive. Most builders don't build a house with the prescriptive code. They actually build it with a performance code where they give what's called trade-offs. They'll take the house and put it through res check, which is a residential energy check that Texas A&M came up with many years ago. I was on that board as an advisor when they came up with res check. What they'll do is that they'll put the model of the house in, and then they'll put it the way the architect has drawn it, with this window and this air conditioner system and this 2x6 wall, this 2x4 wall, these doors, this insulation. And then the builder can actually play with it and get it to a model which is a little bit more efficient maybe, but a little bit less expensive to build. I know that sounds like, hey, they're trying to cut corners, but in most cases, they're just trying to make the house more affordable and still meet a certain energy requirement. So we got off of the zones there, but I just wanted to explain that, yeah, the zones are part of the prescriptive code, but not all builders really use that. They use more of a performance code level. So,
and the various municipalities have the right to amend those codes according to whatever their city council decides. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, because a lot of people don't understand that. They think that the code is set up by the ICC or the federal government and the EPA. And actually, the EPA doesn't have very much to do with the codes at all. They have a lot to do with Energy Star, and we can talk about that in a minute. But the codes are done by the ICC board, which is a United States governmental agency. Okay. They set what they think that the codes ought to be for the country. And when it comes to energy, for the zone that we just talked about. Then the Council of Governments, which are local, have a lot of municipalities within them. In North Texas, the North Texas Council of Government sits down and they decide, hey, what came down from the ICC, and they have a board who says, hey, that works great for whatever, Newark, New Jersey, but that won't work for Dallas, Texas, or that won't work for Frisco or Salina or whatever. Then that COG makes a recommendation to the cities to say, this is what we recommend you do. Well, then the city themselves actually take that recommendation and decide, yes, we want to do it, or no, we don't. The easiest way to explain it is that the city themselves had the final say-so on what code version they want to enforce. And they cannot go any lower than the national recommendation or the national code permit, okay? So if the code says that you've got to use a 3068 door in this deal, they can say, well, we want a 36 door, a bigger door. But they can't say we want a 28 door, a smaller door. They have to go with that code or more stringent. And in most cases, most municipalities do that. The only one in the state of Texas that doesn't is Fannin County, Texas. There's not a city large enough that has the capability of doing that. So what Fannin County does is they just go by whatever the federal government mandates down. Every other county in Texas has a municipality or a city large enough to be able to make up their own rules, but they're got to be more stringent than the national average. So
And then that city's code inspectors make sure that the builders comply with that. And there's a process that they go through.
Yeah. The code inspectors, the local code inspectors know what their amendment, that's what they call it, their amendment does. And that's what they go by, and they enforce those amendments that that city, whether it be Frisco, Salina, or Dallas, does. Yeah.
Right. So the individual city code inspectors have certain stages in the construction process that it's mandated that the code inspector has to come out and bless basically the builder's work. And then that's a mechanism that protects the consumer.
We mentioned earlier about how municipalities can change that. They can also make that more stringent as well. The actual code only calls for 3 inspections that they have to make: foundation, and then what they call the structural part of it, and then mechanical. And then they also have a final. That would be the 4th one, but some of those finals are weird. What they really care about is the structure of the building, the mechanics of the building, and the foundation. So those are the only ones that the ICC drives down that you have to do. Anybody who's built a house in the state of Texas and in any city in Texas knows that each municipality is a little bit different. I know, for example, there is one municipality that has 8 inspections. I'm not going to say who that is because I think it's a little overkill. And they start off with a soil inspection, which is just odd. You can imagine what city in the state, in the area of Dallas, that could be if they want a soil inspection. So, but yeah, so they can change those, but they have to have those 3 or 4 for sure. The rest of them, like in Fannin County, they have 4. They have the foundation, they have the structural, they have mechanical, and then they have a final. And that's the minimum that you have to do.
The goal with all of this is to make the houses more energy efficient and safer, but at the same time not go overboard with it, because it just adds to the cost of building the house. And it adds to the time sometimes too, because time is money in the construction industry.
The health, safety, and well-being, those are the 3 things that we have to keep in mind when we're building a code, a new code, or adding to a code. We have to think about those things. Is it safe for the environment, safe inside the home once it's built? Is it safe for the construction workers who are building the house, and the well-being after?
So what code are most of the cities in Texas on now? I know there's a delayed process. Like if you're not familiar with this, you think, well, why are they on a 2018 code or something? But that's a norm.
So most of them are on 2018 or 2021. 2024 has been amended and is out there. As a matter of fact, I just got my 2024 book, even though I helped write part of it. But the Council of Governments is just now going over the 2024 and making their recommendations to the municipalities right now. So it takes about 2 or almost 3 years before a municipality adopts the latest code. And to tell you the truth, the 2024, just as a tidbit here, now that it's out, is less stringent than the 2018. So if you're building a house in a 2018 in certain areas, your house is a little bit more rigid in the codes than it is in 2024.
Is that mainly because of affordability issues or?
That's exactly what it is. It's manufacturing capabilities more than anything. The manufacturing could not keep up with the very stringent 2018. You got to remember, we had an issue in 2020, as we all know, COVID, and a lot of the manufacturers shut plants down and they just didn't open them because it was economically not feasible. The ICC board recognized that, and they gave trade-offs for that. Nothing for the health and safety of the home or the structure of the home, but they made some trade-offs to allow certain things to be put into a home that they weren't allowing in 2018.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul. And we appreciate all that you've taught us today about building codes.
It was my pleasure. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that stuff, so I enjoy talking about it. So thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.